After Effects gives you the tools to have some illustration capabilities using the shape tools. Although I personally don't use these a lot, I don't illustrate a lot, the shape tools can be used in various ways. They can be used for creating masks, they can be used for creating paths. Often you'll see a shape accompany a title or a lower third animation. So today we'll create our name in text and just add a simple shape around the edge. The goal here isn't to make anything look amazing, it's just to cover the basic usage of a shape. So let's start by just creating text. So I'm just going to put my name. Let's go all caps. Ryan Collins, and we'll just align this to center. Let's take my second name and I'm just going to make this light, I think, or we can go thin. Ryan Collins, cool. So there we go. And what we can actually do here is click this button for transparency grid. So you could, obviously you can't really see anything at the moment, but I want to make a black rectangle and I won't see that on a black background. So if we go to fill, let's go back a second, let's just click the rectangle tool here, click fill, and I'm just going to create just a dark grey rectangle. I'm going to turn the stroke down by dragging the number next to stroke down. Might have mentioned earlier that the stroke is the outline of the rectangle, and then we can just drag out a rectangle here, and when I let go and click in the timeline, that rectangle is made. If I press V, I deselect my shape tool and I go back to my selection tool, which is this guy up here, and that lets me drag around my shape. Now I can drag the shape under my name and you can see that it is, you can see the shape and you can see my name. If we hold shift and select my name and the shape layer and then go to align, you can see it's changed to selection. So if you've got two things selected, we can actually align these to each other by clicking horizontal and vertical. So now that is a perfect shape layer. But the shape layer is a bit too fat, so if I click the shape layer, I can click the square at the top here and I can change the scale, and I can do that the same on the edge. So just like with everything else, the anchor point determines how the properties transform. So I might actually want to bring this just over Ryan, but obviously when I'm dragging it, it's dragging it towards the anchor point. So what I can do is I can press Y, select my anchor point and bring that to the left, and if I hold shift, I can, or control, sorry, I can snap it to that left side. So now if I press V again to get my selection tool back, I can actually drag my shape down there so I can animate this in. So what we could do now is just make a simple animation. So if I go down to my shape layer, transform properties, and we click position and scale here, and then what I can do is I can go back to the start of the timeline and just drag the scale down, scale it down here, and then you can see it's a bit long. So we can drag our second keyframe and bring that back. We don't actually need the position keyframe. So you can see now we've animated our shape, really basic animation. But what we can do is we can press F9, easy ease these in. And I'm probably going to drag the left handle across with our speed graph, which we've learned. And then I get that nice smooth animation. I might even just bring this back a few more frames and we get that basic animation. Okay, what I can also do is turn on motion blur so that when this is moving you can see there's a nice little blur on the shape. And now we just need to animate the text at the same time. So I might actually go a bit further out and drop down the animate and just animate position, bring the position all the way down here. So I'm actually using this position, not the position for the layer. There's a reason for that, and it's because we're going to use a mask. So if I go to, let's say, 20 frames here, sorry, that'll be 1 second and 20 frames. Now that I've dragged the position down, I can use the range selector and I can make a keyframe at the start of this animation for start, and then I can go to 1 second and 20 frames, and I can bring the range selector up so that we kind of get this animation. But obviously it's not set with the same speed graph, so it's fallen a bit behind. So we'll just set the easy ease on the animation to be the same, and there you go. It looks okay, but the problem is we're still seeing it down here, so all we need to do is create a mask. You can also use a shape layer to create a mask. So let's go to here, let's go to 2 seconds, and if we select the, whilst we've got a layer selected, if we select the square and then draw around our text, you can see we create a mask. So if we just bring this mask just to below where our text is, now the text doesn't appear through the bottom of the screen. It only starts appearing behind the mask. And what I might actually do is just bring these keyframes, or at least bring this first keyframe forward a little bit, so the animation doesn't start until the block is all the way in. And you can play with this. There's so much we can actually do here, but this is just get a basic understanding that if you're not selected and you use a rectangle, you'll draw a rectangle. If you have got something selected, you'll draw a mask. And you can see that there's like a definite edge in the mask. So what we can do is go down to Ryan Collins here, drop down masks, drop down mask 1, and just add a tiny bit of feather. And then you can see there's a bit of a smoother edge there. You don't want too much feather because you don't want it to affect the final composition. But if we actually zoom in here, you can see that the feather just helps ease that animation in. If we go too far up, it starts affecting the whole thing. So let's just bring it up to there and add motion blur to this as well. And then maybe select fit here so we can see the animation in full. So we press L to drop the keyframes. We press Shift and on both layers and then duplicate both the layers. Then what we can do is actually go to layer, we can right click, go to time reverse layer, and now if let's have a look at where these animations finish. So the animations finish here for the bottom 2 layers, so we can trim these by pressing Alt and right bracket. And then we can trim the start of the reversed animation here when the animations have finished. And then what we can actually do is we can get the reverse animation at the end. But this might be a bit long. I reckon about 4 seconds and 15 frames I want them to start disappearing. So what I can do is I can press Alt and left bracket here, and I can just drag these back and come over to I hold shift and bring the cursor over to the start here, and then press Alt and left bracket to trim these off. So now you can see that we have the animation coming in and the animation going out. For going in, I don't mind it speeding up. For going out, I think I want it to go out quicker. So what I could actually do is I could change these keyframes. So we'll just go back to the speed graph, and I can select both of these keyframes, and just by dragging the one arrow across, we get a new animation. And I could even bring these further across. Let me just get my keyframes back. So I can go to these, press F9, just make life easier, and then we can drag these further to the right. So we actually get a quicker disappearing animation. But you can play around with these. I think I want to go back to let's have a look. If we trim these off, went a bit far then. and we get these layers, and I think just bringing them to the middle brings a nice little outro. And now, because that's the full animation, what I can do is just trim the comp to the work area like this by dragging the work area end, press right click, trim comp to work area, press L, close this down, and you can see I've got this little animation. So there's a lot of cool tricks there, and that's going to lead us on nicely to our future projects. I'm not actually gearing this course towards making these lower thirds and things, but the techniques that we're using when we get into making the projects, these are the kind of things that I do a lot. So what we could actually do here as well, if we wanted to, so right now we've just got this shape layer animating in on a transparent grid. We can actually render this out. So if I go to File, Export, and Add to Render Queue, the render queue appears here. So render settings, I keep on best settings, I never really change that. I click on lossless though, and you can see it's AVI, which is going to be too big a file. So we can change this to QuickTime, and then change channels to RGB and alpha. And the alpha means that it's going to render out without the transparent background. So I'll give you a quick example of how that's going to work now. Let's output this to, we click output to, and that's where we save the file folder. Overlay library, Ryan, lower third. Let's render this out. Okay, let's go back into our composition, and we can just delete these layers. I'm just going to grab a piece of footage or an image in 1 second. So let's just grab this picture of this handsome man by here, and let's drag him in. Let's just do this. I mean, like, it's not ideal, but, and then overlay library, I'm just going back to the overlay library and dragging Ryan lower third and bringing that into our project. And we've just rendered this out. Now I can bring it in the timeline, and I can actually, this is just a movie file now, so I can keep this in my project and use it whenever I need it. So if you've ever wondered how that's done, that's how it's done. So thanks for watching. Next video we'll go on over compositions in greater detail and really start to get things rolling. You've almost learned all the basic essential techniques we need to start making the cool stuff that you came here for. So stick with me, and it won't be long and we'll be making some great stuff.